Area 51. Area 51 is the most infamous military base in the world, a name that has become synonymous with secrecy, denials, and speculation. Located deep in the Nevada desert, the base sits on the flat expanse of Groom Lake, surrounded by barren mountains and guarded by one of the strictest perimeters on Earth. For decades, the United States government refused to even acknowledge its existence, fueling countless rumors about what was hidden inside. The base was first established in 1955 as a testing ground for the CIA's U-2 spy plane. Its remote location and natural cover made it ideal for developing the most advanced aircraft in the world. Over the years, the skies above Groom Lake saw the first flights of projects that would change military aviation: the A-12 Oxcart, the SR-71 Blackbird, and the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. To the public, strange lights moving unnaturally across the desert night sky became evidence of something otherworldly. To the military, it was simply the cost of secrecy. Because of its classified operations, Area 51 became a magnet for conspiracy theories. Some believed it housed captured alien spacecraft, others claimed the government was conducting experiments far beyond conventional science. In 1989, a man named Bob Lazar appeared in interviews claiming to have worked on reverse engineering alien technology at the site, igniting a wave of fascination that never died down. It wasn't until 2013, under the Freedom of Information Act, that the CIA officially acknowledged Area 51's existence, confirming it had been a testing ground for experimental aircraft. But the specifics of what goes on there today remain completely classified. Restricted airspace, heavy surveillance, and armed patrols keep all outsiders away. Cheyenne Mountain Complex. Hidden inside the granite of Colorado's Rocky Mountains lies the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, one of the most secure facilities ever built. Construction began in the early 1960s, at a time when nuclear war with the Soviet Union felt almost inevitable. The mission was clear: create a command center that could survive the end of the world. Engineers carved out 5 acres of chambers inside the mountain, shielding them with 2,000 feet of solid rock. Behind blast doors weighing 25 tons each, they built a fully self-sustaining fortress. The entire complex was mounted on hundreds of massive steel springs, designed to absorb the shock waves of nuclear explosions. It had its own power plant, reservoirs of fresh water, and enough food and supplies to keep hundreds of people alive underground for months. For decades, Cheyenne Mountain served as the headquarters of NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. From its hardened operations center, US and Canadian officers monitored radar feeds, tracking every missile launch and aircraft movement across the globe. If the Soviet Union had ever launched a nuclear strike, the first warning would have come from inside this mountain. After the Cold War, many of NORAD's operations were relocated to Peterson Air Force Base, but Cheyenne Mountain was never abandoned. After the September 11th attacks, it was placed back on full alert as a backup command center, and its facilities continue to operate in varying degrees of readiness. Popular culture immortalized it in films and television as the ultimate bunker, but the reality is no less striking. Dugway Proving Ground. It was established in 1942 in western Utah during the height of the Second World War. It was created as a remote site where the United States Army could test chemical and biological weapons away from the public eye. Its isolation was absolute, with more than 800,000 acres of desert set aside for experiments that could never take place near populated areas. What began as wartime necessity quickly became one of the most secretive testing grounds of the Cold War. At Dugway, weapons of unimaginable danger were trialed in controlled environments. Chemical agents such as mustard gas and VX were released in open-air tests, and biological organisms were studied for their potential as instruments of war. Over the decades, the facility expanded to include laboratories, underground bunkers, and even mock villages designed to measure how deadly agents might spread in a real environment. Accidents inevitably followed. In 1968, thousands of sheep were found dead near Skull Valley, a tragedy that investigators linked to a nerve agent test that had drifted beyond the proving ground's boundaries. Although the Army initially denied responsibility, the incident revealed just how dangerous the work at Dugway could be. The Cold War kept Dugway's activities shrouded in mystery. To this day, much of its research remains classified, though officials emphasize that the focus has shifted toward defensive measures. testing protective equipment, developing detection systems, and training troops to operate in contaminated environments. In 2015, however, a scandal reignited fears about the base when it was discovered that Dugway had mistakenly shipped live anthrax samples to laboratories across the country and abroad, a lapse that highlighted the risks of handling such dangerous material. Dugway Proving Ground may not have the popular fame of Area 51, but within military and intelligence circles, it is equally notorious. Kapustin Yar. In the aftermath of the Second World War, as the United States tested rockets in the deserts of New Mexico, the Soviet Union needed a proving ground of its own. In May 1946, a barren stretch of steppe east of Volgograd was chosen as the site of a new military installation, and it was here that Kapustin Yar was founded. The first rockets launched from the base were German V-2s, captured in the ruins of Europe and shipped to the Soviet Union to be reverse-engineered by teams of scientists. From these beginnings, Kapustin Yar grew into the Soviet Union's central rocket test range, a place where intercontinental missiles, anti-aircraft systems, and later satellites were all tested under a veil of secrecy. In the 1950s, atmospheric nuclear tests were carried out at the site, leaving entire tracts of land irradiated. To Soviet citizens, Kapustin Yar was a name whispered but not discussed, an invisible city devoted entirely to military science. For Western intelligence, it became a point of constant surveillance, its missile launches tracked by spy planes and early satellites as the arms race spiraled higher. Inevitably, secrecy bred myth. Strange lights in the night sky, the thunder of rockets breaking the silence of the steppe, and the refusal of officials to explain any of it led to stories of something otherworldly. By the 1960s, Kapustin Yar was being called the Russian Roswell, a place where rumors insisted that crashed alien craft were hidden in underground hangars. No evidence ever surfaced to support these claims, but the legends endured, fueled by the very real veil of classification. Even today, some conspiracy theorists believe that secret research into extraterrestrial technology continues in the tunnels beneath the range. What is known is that Kapustin Yar remains active, modernized, and still used for missile tests and military training. Its long history makes it one of the most important sites in the evolution of Soviet and Russian strategic power. Mount Yamantau. In the remote southern Urals of Russia, a mountain that conceals one of the largest and most mysterious military complexes ever built. American satellites first began noticing massive excavation there in the 1990s, long after the Soviet Union had collapsed. At a time when Russia claimed it was bankrupt and unable to pay its soldiers, hundreds of rail cars were hauling materials into the mountainside, and entire new towns were springing up nearby to house thousands of workers. The sheer scale of activity stunned Western intelligence, which struggled to explain why Russia was pouring scarce resources into carving open the heart of a mountain. American analysts speculated that the complex was a doomsday bunker, a command post large enough to house tens of thousands of people and sustain them through months or even years of nuclear war. Some even claimed it was a vault for Russia's national treasures or a repository for weapon stockpiles, but the truth was never revealed. When questioned directly, Russian officials gave contradictory answers. The US Congress labeled it a site of deception and denial, a project deliberately hidden from outside scrutiny. To this day, no Western observer has ever set foot inside, and no photographs from within have ever emerged. The underground Great Wall. Beneath the northern mountains of China lies one of the most ambitious and secretive engineering projects of the modern age. A tunnel network so vast it has been compared to the Great Wall itself. Known as the Underground Great Wall, it was built by the 2nd Artillery Corps, China's strategic missile force, to ensure that its most powerful weapons could survive any attack. Stretching for thousands of kilometers, the tunnels wind through mountains and valleys, invisible to satellites, immune to airstrikes, and designed to conceal the movement of nuclear missiles. The existence of this subterranean labyrinth first came to light in 2009, when Chinese state media briefly revealed its construction. For a moment, the world glimpsed images of long reinforced shafts, missile transport vehicles rolling through cavernous corridors, and soldiers stationed underground as if in a city below the earth. The message was clear. China had created a system that guaranteed its nuclear arsenal could never be wiped out in a first strike. But after that brief disclosure, the door slammed shut. What makes the underground Great Wall extraordinary is not only its scale, but its secrecy. Western analysts believe the tunnels may stretch for more than 3,000 miles, linking launch silos, storage depots, and hidden bases across northern China. Within this network, missile convoys can move undetected, emerging at locations chosen only at the last moment. For China, the tunnels embody a doctrine of survival and deterrence. For the outside world, they represent one of the greatest mysteries in global security, a hidden system that could alter the balance of power in a nuclear exchange. Pine Gap. It was built in the late 1960s as part of a deep partnership between the United States and Australia. On the surface, it looks like a cluster of white redomes, giant golf ball-like spheres scattered across the red Earth. But behind those domes is a system of antennas and satellites that form the backbone of America's global surveillance network. Pine Gap was conceived during the Cold War as a ground station to control U.S. spy satellites orbiting the Earth. From this remote desert location, engineers could track missile launches, monitor Soviet radar systems, and intercept communications across vast regions of Asia, the Middle East, and the Pacific. Over time, its mission expanded. It became one of the primary nodes of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, linking Australian and American agencies directly with the CIA and NSA. Signals intercepted from mobile phones, radios, and satellites are funneled into Pine Gap systems, where they are processed and relayed to command centers half a world away. Secrecy has always been central to Pine Gap's existence. For years, the Australian public knew almost nothing of what went on inside the domes, and even Parliament was kept in the dark. It was only through declassified documents and whistleblower accounts that its true role came into focus. Former insiders described Pine Gap as one of the most critical stations for America's drone warfare program, providing real-time intelligence and targeting data for operations in the Middle East. Others revealed its role in monitoring global internet traffic, a desert node in the vast web of surveillance revealed by the Snowden leaks. Despite its importance, Pine Gap is rarely spoken of openly. It is defended by layers of fences, patrols, and secrecy agreements, and access is restricted to only the highest level personnel. Raven Rock. Hidden in the rolling hills of Pennsylvania, just a few miles from the Maryland border, lies one of the most secretive bunkers ever built by the United States. Officially known as Site R, but more commonly called Raven Rock, it was designed during the early years of the Cold War to serve as the underground Pentagon, a command post from which the American government could continue to function after nuclear war. Construction began in 1951, when the threat of Soviet atomic attack seemed imminent. Raven Rock was engineered for survival. Inside its caverns, 5 large buildings were constructed on giant shock absorbers, each designed to withstand the tremors of a direct nuclear strike. The complex was equipped with its own power plant, water supply, and air filtration systems, allowing thousands of personnel to live and work underground for months without returning to the surface. Its communications facilities were tied directly to the Pentagon, the White House, and NORAD, ensuring that even if Washington, D.C. was destroyed, America's military command would endure. For decades, the existence of Raven Rock was scarcely acknowledged. Only in the 1990s, after the Cold War ended, did fragments of its story begin to reach the public, revealing just how vast and prepared the United States had been for nuclear Armageddon. Even today, Raven Rock remains active. It was expanded after the September 11th attacks, modernized with new communications infrastructure, and continues to serve as one of the core continuity of government sites in the United States.
Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you would like to see similar videos. Thank you again, and goodbye.